Hi everyone, it's Nicole. Welcome back to my channel and another card making video tutorial. Today we're going to do more coloring on Kraft with ELOW markers. I cannot get enough. This time we are going to be featuring the brand new Caring Thoughts stamp set from the recent Simon Says Stamp Dear Friend release. This was released on the 19th of May 2023. As well as the fun little background. So those postage stamp, or what I kind of think looks like a pinked background, is with the modern postage dies. Let's go ahead and get started by coloring in our images for these cards. Now I decided to go ahead and stamp these on some Desert Storm Neenah cardstock. I cannot get enough of the look of coloring with alcohol ink markers. Today I'm using ELOW markers. These are really my new favorite. And I am going to color these all in with these markers. Now I'm using Hero Arts Intensified Black ink as my ink for coloring with alcohol ink markers. This is really an ink that I use most of the time. If I'm using Copics, ELOWs, anything like that, it's not going to bleed. Now, I'm just using scraps of Desert Storm from my stash, so I didn't quite have enough room for all of these critters. I think the only ones I ended up not using were the little kissing squirrels, and I hope to use those at another time. They're just absolutely precious little critters. I'm always a sucker for all of the cute little critter stamps and images. So let's just stamp the bunny on this one. I'm a big fan of using up every little bit and piece of my cardstock. So often you will see me stamping on scraps, like for instance, this one had some words die cut from it from a card I made for Mama Elephant a month or two ago. So I always just hold on to all those little bits and pieces. Okay, once we have all of these stamped, we're going to start coloring them in with ELOW markers. So let me grab my markers. Now, I did speed up the entire video, but I have not sped up the coloring portion more than anything else. So you're going to see this for all of my fans of coloring and watching coloring. Hopefully it gives you a very good idea of how the coloring process takes. That was the most time-consuming part of this entire project, and even at that, I didn't feel like it was too terrible long. I was testing out some of my colors over there along the right side of the cardstock just to see what's going to show up on the Kraft. The very, very lightest may not always show up super great. So I did some brighter greens for the cute little caterpillar, which totally gives me Alice in Wonderland vibes, with the exception that there's a little dragon peering up at the caterpillar, which I think is super sweet and cute. Then I'm going to color in the rest of the greenery here. So my leaves and stem for the daisies and the grass with some yellow greens. And again, all my marker colors are going to be listed down in the description box below, as well as under each individual photo over on my blog for easy reference. I've listed out each section I colored and then what marker colors I used with those. If this is your first time watching a video where I've colored with ELOW markers and you see me flipping the markers over, I chose with these markers. One of the unique things about ELOW markers is that you can choose if you want the standard like brush chisel, much like you would with a Copic, or you can choose brush and each end would be the same color of brush, or in this case I bought brush and I got different colors, because when you do a refill is going to be a new, I don't know how you want to say it, a new half of the marker basically. So I find it super duper handy. I love it. You can get connector rings. They come with connector rings, and I put the two markers shading colors closest together in one marker basically, so I can easily flip it over and shade with the other color. It took me just a little bit to get used to, but you guys, once I got used to it, oh my gosh, I love them so much. So handy, takes up a little less room, gotta love that. Especially if you're kind of like me and you have a smaller space, I love them. So you're gonna notice I'm gonna go image by image instead of skipping from, you know, doing all the green in my images and then doing all of the reds or pinks or whatever the case may be. I am going to just color image by image. Colors definitely look different on Kraft than they do on white, but that's not a bad thing. So here I'm laying down some violet colors, and I did purposely pick some of the violets that have more of a pinkish tone to them, which I love. And I think that section's supposed to actually be yellow. I'm just going to color over that. But I love this little dragon. I mean, how adorable is he? And like he's peering around the flowers, peering up at this cute little caterpillar. I just think he's precious. So we'll just keep adding our color here until we get the shading and the saturation just how we want it. Now, something I want to mention about the coordinating dies for the Caring Thoughts is that they die cut very close to the image. They're going to die cut all around all the little bits and pieces, and it's really, really well done. I am loving that. I'm not a big fan of lots of quote unquote white space around my images, and I feel like Simon Says Stamp has really nailed it this time. I love how it's die cutting. There is a sentiment stamp set in this release that also has fantastic dies that die cut close and die cut all the little loops and swirls. The Modern Elegance, oh, I love it as well. So I'm going to do a little blue-green for the little wings here on the back of our dragon. The horns, we'll go back with that same yellow-orange that we used for the underbelly of our dragon. And then I'm going to opt to do a couple of different color combinations for the flowers. This first one is going to be more pink. So I'm going to use my red violets for that. And I'm going to go in with a nice light all over on each of the petals. And really what I find so interesting with coloring on the Kraft especially is the color goes on and it often just kind of looks like it makes the cardstock wet and you don't see a ton of color, like with that lightest pink color that I placed on the petals. But as it dries, you can really see the pink. And then I'm going to go back in here with my darker red violets and just build the color and the shading for each petal. And then I'll go back at the very end with that lightest color that I used again and just kind of blend out any harsh lines that I'm not loving. The center of each flower, I'm going to go back with my yellow oranges, and I know that particular yellow that I just used, my lightest color, the other end is a yellow on that one. I kind of know I have them that way. You can obviously, if you are going to use ELOW markers, you can put them together with however you use them most. Now I thought about doing both flowers the same, but then I thought, you know what? I really love these kind of reds and pink shades. So let's go ahead and do a red daisy for this one. So we have, you know, the reds, the pinks, and the purples here in this card. And so I'm going to use more of the red shades for this one. And I will go back and do the yellow oranges for the flower center again. And then this cute little cutie is all done. I would say this particular image has the most color changes, simply because there's a little bit more to it than there is some of the others. We're going to move on to the little mouse. I like to do, as you probably have seen me do a million times, whatever coloring medium I'm doing, a nice light pink for the inside of ears. Then I'm going to use some orange reds, which these are more of the neutrals and the browns, for my mouse today. I opted not to do grays. Sometimes I like to do grays for mice, sometimes I don't. It just depends. I am going to go in with a nice light brown shade, and I did use a very light red shade for like the feet, the hands, things like that on my mouse. It's not really translating super great on camera, but it's the same color I used for the inside of the ear, and it just adds a tiny touch of that pink hint. I don't really want it to be bright pink. And then we're just going to build the color again on our mouse. I always like to start on the light side and build that color up. Now for this rose, we are going to do the pink color. So the bigger pink daisy from before, those are the colors we're going to use for that. But I want to get my little critter all colored in first. When these die cut, you're only going to get like a little hint of the grass dye down below. I should mention that for the grass, I colored that with the yellow-orange shades for all of the images. And I'm going back over my mouse a couple of times to build the saturation. And once I start coloring in the flower, I do notice that I missed a little piece of his cheek over there along the right side, but we'll hit that here in a minute and get it fixed. But I'm gonna add the grass down below. And because I used the yellow oranges for the grass here, I did opt to do the brighter greens then for the stem and leaves. Either one is fine. So on the previous image, I did more of the yellow oranges, then I'm going to go more just with greens here. Just something for a nice contrast. And this is another example of a very light shade, this first green shade, that only puts a hint of color down. And it looks kind of wet when it goes on, but now that it's dried, you can see that it's definitely green. Some little pink, a little darker pink. Actually, I say pink, but I used a red shade for the cheeks there and the nose. And then we're gonna go in with our darker greens and just build up the color, our mid-tone. And then back to our lightest shade to blend out the edges of our leaf. Aren't they so cute? There is just something so magical about coloring on Kraft. I don't know what it is lately, but when I have to color images, I almost always want to color on Kraft. I love how it looks. So I just did an all over, I didn't worry about the lines of the stamp for my rose, but then as I'm going in with my darkest and mid-tone, now I'm going to pay attention to the lines of the flower. So I'm just kind of basically tracing around the stamp lines here with the dark, and then I'm going to go over those lines and pull that color out more with my mid-tone before going back with my lightest shade and blending the entire thing out. Look at the depth and dimension. Oh, so pretty. And again, it's wet right now, but as it dries, it looks even better. Absolutely love it. I think it's so, so pretty. All right, our panda. Now, this is something funny that I wanted to mention. When I stamped these, all I could think was coloring on Kraft and how fun it's going to be, not thinking that I usually use the white for the white on a panda. So I needed to problem solve this a little bit. And so I decided to start with the branch that he's hanging on. So I have all those colors listed below. I went with the yellow oranges for the leaves, and then a couple of orange reds for the branch that are in a darker shade or tones than the mouse we just colored. And I'm going to use some warm grays for the gray coloring on my panda, which is kind of what I normally do for critter coloring. Is I generally opt for those warmer gray shades in my collection. I decided that a white colored pencil, and I'm going to use, which colored pencil am I using? My Faber-Castell polychromos. There we go. Couldn't think of the name. We're going to use that to color in the white areas on Kraft. Now, I have used colored pencils on Kraft many times. It's actually one of my very favorite looks for colored pencils as well. And it is going to really make just the best little white areas, if you will, on our panda, and give you that contrast that we want where the white areas aren't Kraft, because we definitely don't want that. So I'm going in with kind of a light hand here, and then I'm going to do a much darker, or go over it again after I've added in the gray or black sections of our panda. And it really is amazing to me what a huge difference this makes in the overall design. You can really see the high contrast there before I add in the gray sections, that the color really gives you that contrast. Just like anytime, I like to start with a nice light. So this is definitely too light here, the gray I'm using. But we'll build that up with a couple of darker shades. So this is warm gray 5. I'll use 7 and 9 as well. And I haven't added white to the rest of my panda, so now I'm going to do that. And it's really just like magic. Don't be afraid to use your colored pencils in conjunction with your alcohol ink markers. Works fantastic. Oh, look at that. So cute. And here I'm just going to go back over a little bit on the face that I saw that felt like needed a little bit more. So now we need to definitely build up that color, and I'm going to go in with much darker. I think I'm using 7 here. I'm even going to pull in a little bit of 9 just to deepen and darken that, but I go slow. I just always tend to work my way up slowly here, especially with black. I'm always super nervous it's going to get too dark. But now I flipped it over. I'm using the 9. Let's just add in little bits here and there. And then we can blend out with 7 and go back with 5 anywhere that we need to. I just love this panda. I think he's absolutely precious. Now on the bottoms of the feet, I tend to like to keep those a little on the lighter side, and you'll notice that there's some red color on the little pads of his feet. I do color those in, and that is a pretty light shade, but I will kind of color over the whole thing with my gray because it's really bright. Even now I feel like it's really bright. But see how I color over the whole thing, but you still get that hint of pink? I love that. Okay, he's looking pretty cute. Now I did take my lightest warm gray in the 3. I think that's the lightest I have. And I did add a little shading over a few areas on the white because I didn't want it to be so flat. It's a little bit flat here. I could have taken a gray colored pencil, but I didn't. And then I used my blender, it's called 0 here in the ELOW markers, to blend that out a little bit. And then I will go back over with a little bit more white pencil when that dries. I'm gonna color in the grass with the same yellow green colors that I used for the leaves on this particular image. Okay, our bunny. I am going to use some warm grays here, but we're going to go on the much, much lighter end of the warm gray spectrum. Just pull in those colors. And again, building up the color on our bunny. So starting with light, I used warm gray 3. Going to use some nice light pinks for the tummy, but go over it with the warm gray so it's not so pink. And our color here is going to come in the form of the little daffodil and the butterflies. One will be purple, one will be red. I feel like the panda image is the only one that didn't have a lot of color, which is okay with me. I'm going to add my color with some red hearts on that particular card design. So our coloring is almost done here. I do want to mention that I chose to do these as separate cards, and I know I said that earlier in the video. You could do more of a slimline style card and combine several of these together if you wanted to. But I love when I sit down to craft. Pretty much anymore, I do try to make more than one card at a time to utilize my time the most effectively and get the most, I don't know, bang for my buck, basically. Meaning that way I walked away from one crafting session with 4 birthday cards. You can't beat that. You could even make even more of these if you wanted to. You could stamp the image multiple times and make a whole bunch that are the same. Very, very cute and fun. Even if you would combine a couple, let's say like the bunny and the mouse together, and you could make several just like that. I think that the card design here even, I think you could probably combine those two especially very easily together. Now, once I have everything colored in, I am going to grab the Coordinating Caring Thoughts dies, and I am going to die cut my images off camera, and then we are going to work on building our backgrounds. Now, even though the focus of these designs is on the Caring Thoughts cute critters, I do want to create some sort of fun background here today, and I really wanted to use the modern postage dies. There's also stencils. Those would be fun, and I'm going to give you an optional idea if you would rather stencil than do some die cutting. And I'll do that kind of as I'm finishing up my coloring here. So I am going to be layering some die cut pattern paper and what I call fabric swatches, because it almost looks like a pinked edge, that postage edge. And so I grabbed some favorite pattern paper from my stash from Honeybee Stamps and some ginghams. If you would rather do some layering postage, like those postage rectangles on your background, you could grab your favorite Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated inks and you could overlap some rectangle backgrounds on your card base, even on Kraft. It would look amazing. And you could ink blend some rectangles on your background. And I think that that would be so sweet and precious. So I have 4 4¼ by 5½ inch panels of Desert Storm cardstock here. And my favorite things, happy birthday background stamp. This is going to not show up a ton. Any text stamp is going to be great here because it's not really the prominent feature. I just want to ink up my background a little bit and give it a little something. I'm not a huge fan of super solid. You guys probably know this. I am stamping this with the fawn colored Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated ink. And once I have all 4 backgrounds inked, I'm going to go around the edges with the fawn ink and a Simon Says Stamp blending brush. And I'm going to ink up the edges just a little bit to give a little softer edge than just the text all the way to that outer edge of each background panel. That's something I love to do a lot. If you guys have followed me for a while, you know that I love a text background, and it doesn't have to be like super in your face. That's the only thing you see. It can be very subtle like it is in this case. So I'm using my Simon Says Stamp Glass Magnetic Matte. It's very easy for cleanup. It's what I use probably 99% of the time when I am doing ink blending anymore or anything messy, because I can take a microfiber cloth and a little water and clean it up. If you get a little stain on there, a little stamp cleaner will work great, or even a little rubbing alcohol. I will do that when I get alcohol ink markers on my mat, which I really need to do. I noticed there's a little mark and I just keep not getting my alcohol or my rubbing alcohol out to get that cleaned up. This goes on and it looks a little dark here, and you will notice in the finished cards it is not quite that dark. The color is going to lighten quite a bit as it dries and is absorbed into the cardstock. I'm going to take I think it's the second from largest. The largest size background is going to cover most of the surface area on this card, and I really wanted to have multiple fabric swatches, if you will, on my card background. So I have taken this medium size, and I'm inking up the edges with the WOODSY colored Positively Saturated ink. This is going to be a little bit darker color than the FAWN. And I just want to distress them up. Now, again, this is another one. It goes on really dark, and the edges are going to remain a little darker, but it looks lighter once it's on the card. And I'm going to go around the edges on all 3 panels for each card design. I am not going to share this or the steps for this for every single card, as the steps are the same, and I just wanted to save a little bit of time for everybody today. But the pattern paper I'm using, it's all going to be from the Gingham Galore Springtime, or believe it or not, Holiday. That's for the tan color. 6x6 paper pads from Honeybee Stamps. And I wanted to keep it very consistent. So you're going to see that they're all ginghams of some sort. Some are more of the on point, some are going to be more of the straight up and down, but just absolutely adorable. And on that middle swatch for each card, that is where the critter's going to go. So the top and the bottom are going to be underneath that middle swatch, and I am going to glue those down. I did not line them up exactly. I want them all to be off skew just a tiny little bit. And then we're going to glue the critter to that middle one. So in this case, the panda. For each card then, I am going to get 2 Misties ready to go. You could use just a standard if you had positioned your stamp different. I didn't, and so I just used 2 Misties. But we're going to get them prepped and ready. 1 to stamp hello and 1 to stamp the rest of the sentiment. For most of the cards, I did 2 tones. So I am going to stamp the hello, which is in script, also from Caring Thoughts, in the Field Positively Saturated ink. And then the rest of the sentiment, I'm going to stamp in WOODSY. And the only one I didn't do this on, I accidentally put my fabric swatches, my pattern paper, in the wrong order. And I put a darker green down on the bottom, and that's going to be the Dragon Caterpillar card. It's not going to show up great. So I did the whole thing in the WOODSY color so it would show up. But I've shifted it over there to the right just a little bit. Look how cute that is. I used 2 Misties, or I stamped them separately, however you want to do it, so that I could have my sentiments closer together. If you stamp them at the same time, the hello and the may you have the sweetest birthday are going to be pretty far apart. To finish each card design then, I am going to use some hearts from the Doodlebug design Puffy Shapes stickers. These are in the Ladybug color. Do I have them in every single color? I sure do. I love these, and I don't know why I don't use them more often, because I absolutely love them. They are not, they say puffy, but they are not that thick, you guys. They are going to be the perfect accent, and you guys know how much I love all of my little hearts. So we're going to do 1 underneath the sentiment, and then we're going to do a couple up high, just to give you that nice little trio of sweet little designs. Perfect little embellishment. Then you would attach this to a white top fold or side fold card base, whatever you prefer. Now, when I was completely done and had all of my cards put together, I did end up thinking, you know what, I want a little splatter, but I want to be very careful with it. This is some white gouache in a small paintbrush. I've watered it down just a tad, added just a little bit of water, and I'm trying to avoid like splattering right on top of the sentiment or right on top of the image, but I'm going to splatter all of these and then set them aside to dry, and I love it. It's like just the perfect little finishing distress look. The lighter pink, in fact, I think the only card I did the red hearts on is the panda card, but the rest, all of the puffy hearts came from the Ladybug set. So there's about 3 different shades of hearts in each package of Doodlebug, which I love. And so I use the same package for all 4 cards. They're just, some of the hearts are a little bit different color than the others. You'll want to make sure you let this sit and completely dry. Mine dried pretty fast. Oh, so cute. I love it so, so much. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this set of 4 cards using products from the Simon Says stamp Dear Friend release. The supplies I used are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining me today for another paper crafting tutorial. I love being able to share with this incredible community of crafters. I want to give a huge shout out and special thank you to my amazing Patreon members. If you're interested in joining Patreon, please click the link in the description underneath the video here on YouTube. Patreon is a private community where you can support more of what I do. There's exclusive content. You'll receive a handmade birthday card from me during your birthday month, monthly lives for my top tier patrons, and more. We would love to have you join our growing community. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, click the like button, and don't forget to click the notification bell so you're always notified when I have a video or go live. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you again next time.